What is the first move Alex Anthopoulos should make this offseason, and who are some targets the Braves should be going after? I'll answer those questions and many more on today's episode of Locked On Braves. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I am your host, Jake Mastriani. You can follow me on social media at ShortstopBall. Also, make sure you check out my written work over at BravesToday.com. Got plenty of off-season content in written form over there for you as well. Make sure you follow the podcast on social media at LockedOn_Braves. Send in any questions, comments, or feedback you have for the podcast. Today's whole episode will be compiled of the questions you submitted there at LockedOn_Braves. So excited to get into those questions on today's Mailbag episode. If you're new watching on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Of over 7,500 subscribers on YouTube. Hit that like button as well so we get more subscribers, more people in here as we enjoy Braves content all off season long and obviously all year long and next year as well. Love doing this podcast. We still got it going 5 days a week for right now, probably till mid-December, and then we'll probably dial it back a little bit, but we are still 5 days a week, so plenty of Braves content coming your way throughout the offseason. So make sure you're subscribed on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Thanks to all those out there that are everydayers. Continue to come in here. Shout out to Jeffrey Humphreys, Kenneth McHenry, Nixie, Chris Kaysen, Leanne Maynard, Kevin, Garrett, Veronica, all of you in here live with me. I do a lot of these off-season podcasts live starting at 9 p.m. Central, 10 p.m. Eastern, if you'd like to join those as well. But however you consume Locked On Braves, thank you so much for doing so. Before we get into the questions on today's Mailbag episode, I want to let you know this episode is brought to you by Jase Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jase case, providing you with personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50-plus infections. Get yours today at jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. All right, let's just run through these questions. I'm just looking at the post that I sent out again at LockedOn_Braves as I do every Friday. So always be looking for that post. Submit your questions there to be answered. We got some time later in the podcast. May try to get to some of these live questions as well, but I'm going to go through the ones on social media first. Hey to Matt and Jack joining here as well. First question is from Brad Horn, and I answered this one on X before I realized that it was a mailbag question, but it says, everyday listener for over a year, great show and content. Thoughts on Jason Heyward at 4 years, $20 million to platoon with Grissom in left field. It'd be cool to bring the local kid back home before he retires. He still can play the field well, and it would get Grissom's bat in the lineup. So you say that, but if you're going to platoon Vaughn Grissom, then he's not going to be getting a lot of at-bats because you're going to face a lot of righties. So I like the idea of getting Heyward, not a 4-year deal, maybe a 1-year deal for $5 or $6 million. It's probably the most I'd be willing to give him. But I like the idea of bringing in Heyward for, that left-handed bat, the defensive versatility, and just that veteran presence on the bench. But again, not at that type of contract. And again, I wouldn't necessarily bring him in as a strict platoon player if it's Grissom out there. If you want to go get Heyward and then, get another right-handed free agent bat and make it a true platoon situation, yes. But for Grissom, in my mind, I'm playing him every day or pretty much every day if I'm calling him up. Now, if you want to call him up and you platoon him with Heyward and maybe start him in other places to give other guys a day off here or there, maybe you do that. But I don't think if you're going to put Grissom in left, I think he's going to get the majority of the starts there if that's the way that they go. Next question from Coach Penham's film supplier says, with MLB trade rumors reporting the White Sox are looking to reduce payroll, what do you think of this mutually beneficial trade of Benintendi plus cash for Soroka, Schuster, or Dodd? I liked Andrew Benintendi last offseason. I thought it was somebody the Braves should go after. At this point, I don't know that I love that. I mean, that deal's not much, especially if the White Sox are throwing in cash. If that's the price for him, I don't hate it. It does give you another type of bat in the lineup, more of an OBP type of player, not as much power. And that's one of the reasons I liked him last offseason, because I thought it would give them a little bit something different. But again, cost always is going to rule in all of these moves that we talk about. That cost to me is not significantly high. Soroka's a guy who needs an opportunity to pitch. I think he would get that with the White Sox. Same maybe could be said for Schuster and Dodd at this point. I wouldn't lose much sleep over trading any of those players. And I think Benintendi could give you a solid bat, not something that's a significant upgrade. I might honestly rather just keep Rosario or try to bring him back at 8-9 million, whatever it may cost to get him back. But I wouldn't hate it because, again, I think it gives you a different type of bat, somebody who can get on base. Like I said, is not going to give you a lot of power, with somebody who's always had well over a 320 on base percentage. In fact, last year was one of the lowest he's had in a while at 326, but again, still a good on base guy, but a 682 OPS last year, just 5 home runs. He's only hit, he hasn't hit double-digit home runs since 2021. So you're just not getting much power from him. And it's really just an on-base type of guy in left field. And I'm not sure the defense doesn't look particularly great either. So I don't, now that I kind of look more at Benintendi's numbers, I don't know that I love that, even if the cost isn't great, because the defense doesn't look particularly great, and you're really just getting a high on base guy, which I wouldn't mind getting in the lineup. But again, if he's not giving you much defensive value either, I'd almost rather just go back and get a Rosario in that situation. Cavs Buckeyes, listening to Effectively Wild today, maybe want Yamamoto even more. I know you've said it's not happening, and I tend to agree, but 25 years old aces are basically never on the open market. Do you think Alex makes a serious inquiry at least? Serious, I don't know. Obviously going to check in on them. I think what MLB Trade Rumors had projected was well over a $200 million deal. I get the point that, you don't typically get 25-year-old starting pitchers on the open market like this. So that does make it a bit unique, and maybe would give you a little bit more incentive to go all in on that. I still don't think the Braves do. Whether or not they should, I don't know. Again, it's just, you never know with pitchers coming over from Japan. And look, Kodai Senga was great last year. There's been plenty of pitchers who have come over from Japan and had plenty of success, but it's still that unknown. And I haven't watched him myself, so I can't give, I can't give a great scouting report of him or what he looks like. Hear great things, certainly. But again, it's just hard to see Alex giving 200 plus million to a starting pitcher where we've yet to see him go over 22 million a year for any player. So again, do I think it should happen? I can't say, because I haven't watched him myself and don't know enough about him. Do I think it will happen? No, just because we've yet to see that from Alex Anthopoulos. But I do agree with you. Getting a possible ace level pitcher at 25 years old, that's different than even extending a Max Fried who's going into his 30s now. So I mean, if those two pitchers are comparable and they're both the same, then yeah, give the money to the younger guy in Yamamoto and let him be, your top of the rotation arm for the next 6, 7, 8 years, whatever the length of the contract may be. Again, it's just that unknown with every, Japanese player coming over here. Another one from Cavs Buckeyes. Can you give a seminar to some of the Braves beat about potential positional value, sample size, team control, and de facto no trade clauses? So I think this is in reference to the article about trading Michael Harris. Some of the other position players actually wrote somewhat of a follow-up article to that on bravestoday.com on Friday. You want to go check that out, and basically just said, first of all, I think the reaction to it's a little overblown. I don't know that Jeff Schultz was necessarily saying they should do that, maybe just perhaps hinting towards it. But either way, you do not trade Michael Harris. You do not trade really any of these positional players. I know there is a need there to go and get starting pitching. Hey, you have one in Max Fried that you can just extend and have for the rest of this run, along with Spencer Strider, like we talked about yesterday's episode. But you also don't create holes to try to fill another one. If you trade somebody like Michael Harris, who is your center fielder, you're taking a huge step back there in center field, not to mention the contract you already have. Same with Ozzie Albies. I think Ozzie Albies, of any of the guys under control, might make the most sense to trade because you might have a replacement for him in Vaughn Grissom. That might open up a door for Vaughn Grissom to be your second baseman, but Ozzie is one of the best offensive second baseman in all of baseball, and he is under the most friendly of team-friendly deals. You just do not trade that. So in no way should the Braves even be considering, in my mind, trading any of their, young position players who are locked up, whether it be Murphy, Olsen, Ozzie, Riley, Acuna, Harris. Those guys go nowhere. You think you can trade Arcia or Ozuna for something? Sure. Go for it. I don't think you're going to get much of anything for either of those two guys. But those would be the only two position player regulars that I would even consider trading. Would not even think about or contemplate or spend much more time than we already have this week because of that article thinking about trading Michael Harris or Ozzie Albies. It's just, in my mind, ludicrous to even think about it. So yes, there's me addressing that as Cavs Buckeyes asked me to. Got a lot more questions to address on today's episode. We'll get into those here next. Whether you're on extended travel, bracing for a major weather event, or limited by yet another supply shortage, I know you've been there. You are covered with Jace Medical. Our friends over at Jace Medical have life-saving antibiotics and a long list of daily medications that can be ordered in a 1-year supply. Order them once, you're good for the entire year. Put your mind at ease. You don't have to worry about going out to the pharmacy, getting your prescriptions, come right to you, and you get them for the entire year. Go online right now at jacemedical.com to receive your 12-month supply on your daily medication. Remember to use our promo code LOCKEDON at checkout for a discount as well. And don't just take my word for it. Listen to this feedback from a customer about Jace Medical. They said, I am so thankful for this service. Supply chain issues caused me to cut pills in half to have it. I ordered most of my daily meds with a yearly supply. I also ordered an antibiotic kit. I feel so secure now. Prices are lower than local pharmacies. I highly recommend this for everyone. I've ordered a Jace case for myself through Jace Medical as well. The process was super simple to go through. So if you or someone you love would get some peace of mind by having a year supply of any daily med, go to jacemedical.com to see if it's offered for you. Remember to use our promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your purchase. That's locked on at checkout for $20 off your purchase at jacemedical.com, JASE medical.com. Getting back into these questions, we got a lot to get to, over 20 questions submitted. Thank you so much for all of these. Next one comes from Aegon, and this is where the title of today's podcast comes from. What is addressed first, the third spot in the rotation or left field? Not going to try to, weasel my way out of answering this one, but it's lots going to depend on what the market does. I think what I talked about the other day in my ideal offseason for the Braves, I like the trade options much better than I like the free agent options, unless they are just going to go crazy and go get a Blake Snell or a Yamamoto or an Ohtani. I like the trade options a lot better than I like the free agent options. I like Corbin Burns. I like Freddie Peralta. I like Dylan Cease. I like, I just think there are better trade options out there to get guys who are under control. Not Burns. He's a rental player, but others, outfielders as well. I think that you can get guys who are under control, maybe at a little bit cheaper, definitely at a little bit cheaper price point for players who are under arbitration. So if Alex Anthopoulos is going to go that way and he's going to be primarily focusing on the trade route, I think it's going to be a while before we see much of anything get going. It might be early December before we see Alex Anthopoulos really make a big move. Now, typically for Alex Anthopoulos, the offseason gets started and he comes out of the gate firing. And he did this year. He locked up, Pierce Johnson, brought him back, locked up Joe Jimenez and got him back. For pitcher, for left field, again, I think it could take a while before either of these things happen, because I think they might go to trade route. I don't know Obviously, they're internal discussions, but I just know me when I look at it and I look at the prices out here that are projected for some of these free agents. I just can't imagine the Braves playing in that neighborhood or in that realm, even though they're spending big money. They're spending more money than they ever have. I'm not saying the Braves are cheap. I know some out there that are, but I just think that money that you're giving 200 to Blake Snell or Aaron Nola, who in my mind could very well be, middle of the rotation starters beginning next year. I think there could be, we saw it with Nola last year. I mean, over a 4 ERA, and Blake Snell is due a lot of regression. I think that's a lot of money to give up for those guys, and those are contracts that I think could hurt you ultimately. I would go the trade route, and that's going to take some time. I think pitcher will be addressed first. I think left field, again, I don't like any of the free agent options for left field. I don't like Cody Bellinger because he's coming off a huge bounce back year, and the just batted ball data doesn't show me that that's going to be able to be sustained, and he's going to get a big contract. Teoscar Hernandez, I don't love. I mean, it'd be another big power bat, but I don't think that's necessarily what the Braves need, especially at that price point. Unless they're going to go the platoon route, and maybe you go out and, I don't want to say this because the chat's about to blow up, go out and get an Adam Duvall and go out and get a Jason Hayward and pair those two guys together, and then maybe left field is taken care of. I think we see another starting pitcher signed or traded for before we see a left fielder. I think it might be a while before we see that left field spot opened up, and they very well may just give Vaughn Grissom a shot out there. I'm very interested to see when Vaughn Grissom starts playing in the Puerto Rican League, if they try him out in left field, if he gets reps out in left field. That, to my mind, is going to be very telling for what the Braves' plans with him could be in 2024. So I would say starting pitcher comes first, whether that is a, middle of the rotation type pitcher or maybe just some more depth being added. I think that happens first before left field. Leland Hurt says, "Hey Jay, great week of podcast for you. Thank you so much for saying that. Truly hope we extend Max, but based on how things went with Freeman and Swanson, I am doubtful AA will make a decent offer to Max. What do you know about Chris Stratton of the Rangers, and as a possible starter might be worth a look?" So I don't know much about Chris Stratton. I believe he came up with the Giants, if memory serves correctly. So I don't know much about him. I know that, the Rangers are obviously coming off a World Series, and trying to win. Stratton had a 3.92 ERA last year, 64 games. So looking at, reliever option here that had a good year, 8.8 K per nine, 2.7 walk per nine, 1.137 whip. So a very good reliever. I know he's been a starter in the past, came up a starter with the Giants, but I don't really know what the fit is there in my mind. So I'd probably pass on that one. Sorry, I'm going to go through some of these a little bit quickly here as I'm got a lot more to get to. Lowell Bowl Braves fan says, with EY and Wash leaving for the Angels, will TP be back? And assuming we're talking about Terry Pendleton here, I don't think so. I think when Terry Pendleton moved to the front office, I think that just kind of, ended his managerial days. I mean, at that time, I know a lot of people were thinking about considering him for the managerial job, but I just don't see it at this point for TP. I really haven't heard much about him since he took that front office job. So I would say no. I think it'll be Tuiasa Sopo, who's been a manager at Gwinnett. Would love to see them, if David Ross is available, bring him in, or maybe even a Martin Prado. But other than that, I really have no idea. I know Mark Bowman tweeted or posted out some names of potential candidates. Dustin Mount says, another one from Leland says, I think the Braves need to bring back Pilar for left field and pair him with Grissom and move on for Rosario. They did already move on from Rosario, declined his options. Pilar is right-handed, so that wouldn't really fit in a platoon with Grissom, and I think Pilar's decided to hang it up. Dustin Mounts asks, what do you think of Liam Hendricks would cost to sign with his recent lost year? Would you take a flyer on him for a year or two, maybe club option for a bounce-back candidate if the price is right? Believe he's having Tommy John surgery, so I think he is out for all of 2024. So unless you wanted to sign him on a 2-year deal where that first year is just $1 million, hey, hang in here with us while we let you recover, like they've done for Kirby Yates, like they've done for Tyler Matzik, then I just don't know that I see it as an option. So I'd probably say no on that. Dustin also said Jerry Dipoto is always wanting to make a trade. What do you think it would take to get one of their young starters in any that you would target? So, I mean, I like Logan Gilbert. I like George Kirby. I think they're solid, middle fringe number 2 guys in a rotation, in a postseason type rotation. I think they'd probably slot in third for the Braves. I think the cost would be extremely high, would obviously depend on what the Mariners need. And I don't think Von Grissom is getting any of those guys. I think the Mariners, if they need anything, I would imagine would be position players. And the Braves just don't have a depth of position players to trade from. So I don't see that being as a good fit for the Braves. Owen Ray, I'd love to hear more about your thoughts on if the Braves go after Emanaga. Seems like an incredible pitcher, and his projected contracts look very affordable. So again, with these types of players, I just don't know a ton about them. So I can't really give you my expert take on what they could potentially be in the major leagues, because it's always an unknown. But 2.77 or 2.66 ERA last year in the JPCL, or for the Japanese league, 159 innings, just 138 hits allowed, 188 strikeouts. I mean, fantastic numbers. They certainly are, no doubt about that. And again, if you wanted to take maybe the cheaper route on some of these guys coming over, there's a lot of international guys available this offseason. If you wanted to take a chance on a cheaper guy like that, I certainly think you could. But again, it's that unknown with those types of players and what they're going to look like when they come over. So again, he's projected by MLB Trade Rumors 5 years, $85 million. So again, not a huge deal, not a big contract. Again, if you want to go a little bit of a safer, cheaper route, I think I'd probably rather go with a guy like Sonny Gray, who is already here. You know what he can do, and you know what he can do against big league competition. So I think if I had to decide between those two, I'd probably just go the Sonny Gray route. Another one from Dustin Mount says, new everyday listener. Thank you so much for that. Do you think it would be a good idea to bring Mark DeRosa in as third or first base coach to kind of help groom him to take over for Snitker in the next few years, since he has aspirations of managing, at least from interviews prior to World Baseball Classic, where he managed Team USA? That is a great one. I have not thought about that one yet. I love Mark DeRosa. I watch a lot of MLB Central during the season, and I've not wanted him to get into coaching because I don't want him to leave that show, because I think him and Roflo and Lauren, I just love that show. It's my favorite baseball, talking baseball show outside of, obviously what we do here at Locked On. But I love that show. I love Mark DeRosa. I think that would be a good candidate to fill one of those coaching roles and kind of help him, whether it's to take over the Braves job later on or just help him, as he gets into his managerial career. I think that would be a great fit as well. So that's a great call from you, Dustin. Large Lars says, do you think TDA could get flipped for a starting pitcher? Murphy needs to play every day, and Trump could be the backup. No, Travis d'Arnaud is one of the leaders of this team. They are not trading him. Hayden Harris, are there any rotation depth pieces the Braves could trade for without giving up much? That the Braves could trade for without giving up much. Not a frontline starter, but a fourth or fifth rotation slot, dependable depth starters. Are there those types of guys out there? I'm sure. No doubt there are. I would not trade a Jared Schuster or Dylan Dodd or a Darius Vines for a fourth or fifth starter. I would just give those guys starts and give those guys rep. I don't feel the need to trade, to give up any type of prospect capital, even if you're not giving up much, to get a back of the rotation starter. You already kind of have that depth in-house for the back of the rotation, and your Elders, your Winans, all of those guys. So are there options out there like that? Yes. Would I do that? No, I would not. Caleb Hudgens, what are the 3 starting pitchers you think the Braves will target the most? I was thinking going with the trade market with guys like Cease, Burns, and Peralta. So those are the 3 guys I mentioned earlier, guys that it looked like could get traded this offseason. And I think the trade route is the way to go. I would love to see Dylan Cease, as I talked about earlier this week, on my ideal offseason, just because it gives you a guy with a little bit more control. You would probably have to give up a good bit to land him, but Dylan Cease is a guy that I would focus on. I don't know much about what else is out there trade-wise. Those are probably three of the biggest names. We know the White Sox are looking to trade, the Brewers potentially as well. Could be cleaning house. Brent Wantanabe, sorry if I messed that up, says, I've seen enough of Schuster and Dodd to believe that their 40-man roster spots are more valuable for other players. Do you agree? Would you find a way to get rid of them regardless? I wouldn't find a way to get rid of them. If there's a trade to be made this offseason and throwing one of them in maybe kind of sweetens the deal, maybe to give if you're trading with a team that's, rebuilding, you give them a really good prospect, like an Owen Murphy, and then maybe you throw in a Jared Schuster or Dylan Dodd to give them, something else and something that they can use at the big league level right away. If I could do that, I would, but I wouldn't just give them away. I mean, you need a lot of starters to get through 162. So as frustrating as the years were for Schuster and Dodd and how I feel like, there's not a lot of upside right now with either of those two, I wouldn't just give them away or kick them off the 40-man. I think they can still be very useful. Another one from Brent. After 2 years, do you think the Braves regret not re-signing Freeman? I think the lineup would benefit from having one player with elite bat-to-ball skills. I don't know how to answer this without saying I think they're happy with where they are. I mean, Matt Olson just put up a phenomenal season that wins MVP awards in a lot of years. So I think they're happy with Matt Olson. Do I think they regret not signing Freddie Freeman? I think to an extent. And again, I don't want to go back in and rehash what all went down there. I think there was miscommunication between the agent and Alex Anthopoulos that really messed up that whole deal. I think both sides really wanted to come back together. And I think if Freddie Freeman just picks up the phone and calls Alex, I think he's still with the Braves today. So there is some regret there because it would have been great to have Freddie Freeman, and he's been fantastic and would be an icon, an Atlanta Braves icon. I think he still will be to a degree, but I think the Braves are also very happy with Matt Olson and what they have now. Scott McIntyre, what do you think a Braves trade package for Corbin Burnes looks like? Owen Murphy or J.R. Ritchie, I think, has to be the headliner in that. I think you probably have to give one, if not both of those two, maybe even a Spencer Schwellenbach and, another really good arm. You probably have to give up three of your good prospect arms in the top 10. Like the Braves do not have the deepest farm system. So, you give up an Owen Murphy or a J.R. Ritchie, maybe even a Schwellenbach, and then maybe even somebody a little bit further down, maybe a young Carlos Lara who has a little bit of upside but some reliever risk. I think maybe if you trade those three guys, you might have a chance. I would not give up. I know I said I would give up A.J. Smith-Shawver for Dylan Cease, and I stand by that because of the extra year for Cease. I would not give up A.J. Smith-Shawver or Hurston Waldrop for 1 year of Burnes, but pretty much everybody else in the farm system, I'd be willing to give up for Corbin Burnes. And I think it would have to take your next best three after those top two in order to get Burnes. I think it's going to be a very high price for him. Matt Cox, do you think Strider works on another pitch this offseason or develops this changeup more? I think he could have a nasty splitter if he started throwing it. Yeah, the splitter would be straight nasty if he could throw one, but I don't think that's something you can just all of a sudden start doing, although Spencer Strider's a rare breed. I think he just starts to develop the changeup a little bit more and just gets more confidence in it. When he locates it well, it's a really good pitch. So I think it's something he just needs to get more confidence in. Halsey says, hey, Jake, what are your thoughts on a possible trade for Tyler O'Neill? Multiple-time Gold Glove winner and a couple years of control left. Not great the last two seasons, but might benefit from change of scenery. Seems to be very athletic as well. I know a lot of people mentioning Tyler O'Neill, Dylan Carlson, the Cardinals as well, a couple of outfitters they have that might be available. I think they could be solid fits. Again, they're not guys that just absolutely wow me or that I get overly excited about, but wouldn't hate it, obviously, depending on the cost and what you would have to give up. I think there could be a little bit of upside with O'Neill, maybe some bounce back. Same for Dylan Carlson, who was a top prospect and just kind of been okay since coming up. But yeah, I like both of those options, and I think they certainly are options. But again, all depends on the price. Marin Herbal says, what do you think the chances are the Braves will sign Sonny Gray? Also, do you think Grissom starts the year in left field? Chances of the Braves signing Sonny Gray, I'd put at 35%. I think that qualifying offer is a big deal. Also, just don't love the price you're probably going to pay for somebody who, again, I think is probably headed for some regression in his mid to later 30s. I don't think Grissom starts next year at left field. Could they start working him in there and, go with maybe a platoon situation to begin the season while they start to groom him for that? Yeah, they could. But I don't feel like he's start the season there. Could he ultimately end up there at some point next year? Yes, but I don't think they start the season with Grissom there. What are your thoughts on Kevin Pillar being signed as a full-time left fielder? No, like I said, I think he's done, and I don't think he has, full-time potential in him at this point. All right, we're going to take one more quick break. I'll see if I get to some of the questions here in the comment section. We'll do that next. Again, I appreciate all the questions. Love Mailbag Friday, my favorite podcast of the week. Thank you so much for submitting those questions. Argena says, I'd also love for you to stay. Good lefty pitchers doesn't come from trees, yeah, and you have them in-house. Again, I would lock up Spencer Strider. It's got to be my number one goal for the Braves this offseason in my mind. That's definitely who I would be going after. Jacqueline says, rumors on Vaughn Grissom being plugged in left field. Should we acknowledge these rumors? I think so. I think it's probably a bit overdue. But again, I'm really interested to see in the Puerto Rican League. I'm going to be watching that to see where he plays. I don't know that they've given up on him as a future shortstop. Again, he's still really young. I need to go back myself and see how much he hopefully grew defensively over the year. People I've talked to that watch him every day at AAA say that he made improvements and looked good. But it's kind of one of those things, if you move him off of it, then it's almost like you're giving up on him being a full-time shortstop in the future. And it's, do the Braves want to give up on that and go ahead and start working him into other positions just to find a way to get his bat in the lineup, or they want to give him every chance possible to be the future shortstop of this team? So that's kind of what they're trying to, battle with right now, and the decision that they're trying to make. Nick C. Jake said, Jake, is there a limit to the amount of years you can sign a player to? That's a good question. I don't think so. Bobby Bonilla is still getting paid, so I don't think there is a limit to that. Ellie Maynard says, how about Vaughn Grissom platoons with Jock Peterson? Kind of talked about this one at the top. Somebody asking about, platooning with Hayward. I'm not calling up Grissom to platoon him. If Grissom is in this roster, if he's on this lineup, he needs to be in there pretty much every day, whether that's playing left field or whether that's spelling Arcia or Ozzy here and there. If Grissom's on the roster, he needs to be playing. He doesn't need to be getting platooned, because if you're platooning him, then the left-handed side of that platoon is going to play the majority of the time. So I don't think platooning Vaughn Grissom in left field is a good situation for him or the Braves, really. All right, thank you so much for your questions. That's going to do it here for this episode. If I didn't get to your questions, as always, make sure you leave a comment down on YouTube. Try to get to those there. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube. If you're not, hit that thumbs up button to help support the show. Subscribe to Locked On Braves wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on social media at shortstopball, at @LockedOn_Braves, and we will talk to you next time.